My name is Haley Ross and I'm 25 years old. After my first major career breakthrough in Seattle, I drove home with my heart racing, imagining the look on my parents' faces when I told them the news. I had just closed a deal worth $2.5 million. Me, the daughter they never believed in. I even stopped by a boutique downtown to pick up gifts. A leather portfolio for Dad, a cashmere scarf for Mom, a silver bracelet for my sister Jessica. I wanted this moment to be perfect. But as I turned onto Maple Street in Portland, Oregon, my childhood neighborhood, something felt wrong. There were black garbage bags piled high at our front gate. At least 12 of them, stuffed so full the plastic was stretching. I slowed the car, my stomach tightening. Then I saw him, my dad, Richard Ross, standing there with his arms crossed, his face hard as stone. Next to him was Jessica, my older sister, her expression cold and unmoved. I pulled over and stepped out, my legs suddenly unsteady. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My dad didn't even blink. "Those are your things, Haley. It's time you moved out." I stared at the bags, seeing the sleeve of my favorite jacket poking through a tear in the plastic. My books, my clothes, everything I owned, shoved into trash bags like I was garbage. "You packed my stuff?" I said, my throat closing up. "While I was gone?" Jessica stepped forward, her voice sharp. "You're 25 now. I was out of the house at 24. You've had more than enough time." I looked between them, searching for some sign that this was a misunderstanding. But their faces were set, decided. This wasn't spontaneous. They had planned this. Waited until I was 1,000 miles away to erase me from their home. "Where's Mom?" I managed to ask. "Inside," my dad said flatly. "She agrees with this decision." The words hit me like a slap. I got into my car, my hands shaking, and drove away. The gift bags sat in the passenger seat, mocking me. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just drove, watching the house disappear in my rearview mirror. Let me take you back. I grew up in the Nob Hill neighborhood of Portland, in a home where perfection was the baseline and I was always falling short. My father, Richard Ross, 54, ran a small accounting firm with an iron fist and a temper to match. My mother, Linda Ross, 52, worked part-time at the public library, her quiet demeanor hiding a talent for cutting remarks that could slice you open before you even realized you were bleeding. Then there was Jessica, my older sister by 7 years. At 32, she was everything my parents had ever dreamed of. A software engineer at a prestigious tech firm downtown, living in a sleek condo in the Pearl District with her fiancé, planning a wedding that my mother talked about more than she talked to me. Jessica was the golden child, and I was the one who existed in her shadow. I graduated from Portland State University with a degree in computer science, but unlike Jessica, who had gotten a full scholarship to Stanford, I had to take out loans. $35,000 in debt that my parents saw as a personal failure. After graduation, I took a job at a small startup in the Pearl District, a team of maybe 15 people working on a productivity app. The pay wasn't great, barely enough to cover my loan payments and basic expenses, which is why I was still living at home. I paid my parents $400 a month, bought groceries, cleaned the house, did yard work. But to them, I was just the burden who couldn't get her life together. Not like Jessica. Sunday dinners were the worst. My father would carve the roast and without fail, he would start. Jessica just got promoted to senior engineer, leading a team of 12 now. He would glance at me. "When are you going to aim for something more stable, Haley?" My mother would chime in. "Your sister already owns property. She's building a real future." I would sit there, forcing myself to nod while something inside me twisted tighter. My sister didn't need to be in the room to make me feel small. When I posted about a successful product launch on social media, Jessica commented within an hour, "Cute project, Haley. Let me know when you're ready for a real career." Her words were public, visible to all my colleagues. I deleted the post, my face burning. The worst part was my parents agreed with her. My dad started demanding I contribute more to household expenses. One month, he handed me a $600 utility bill, claiming it was my share. "Jessica never burdened us like this," he said. I paid it, draining my savings, because what choice did I have? Then I overheard something. It was late on a Tuesday night. I walked past the living room and heard my parents' voices, low and secretive. They were talking to Jessica on speakerphone. "The investment opportunity is solid," my dad was saying. "If we move quickly, we can get Jessica the capital she needs." My mother's voice was excited. It's finally happening. Our daughter is going to build something extraordinary. I froze in the hallway. What investment? Jessica's voice crackled through the speaker. I just need the initial funding. Once we launch, the returns will be exponential. My dad mentioned something about liquidating assets, about a timeline. We'll need to move fast. Before the end of the quarter, they were planning something big for Jessica, something that required a lot of money, and I wasn't part of the conversation. The next morning, I asked casually, "So what's Jessica working on these days?" My mother's face went blank. "Just work." My dad didn't even look up. The conversation died there, but the secrecy gnawed at me. 3 months before that terrible night, my boss called me into his office. "Haley, we've got a major opportunity. A potential client in Seattle. I want you to lead the pitch." "Me? You know the product inside and out. This is your shot." I threw myself into preparation. Late nights became all-nighters. My eyes burned from staring at screens, but I didn't care. This was my chance. The night before I left for Seattle, my dad called. "Haley, we're hosting Jessica's engagement party this weekend. We need you to handle the catering when you get back." "I'm leaving for Seattle tomorrow," I said. "It's a huge pitch. Could be a game changer." There was a pause. "That's nice, but the engagement party is important." He hung up. In Seattle, I walked into that conference room and delivered the presentation of my life. The lead executive signed the contract right there. $2.5 million. My boss clapped me on the shoulder. "You just saved this company, Haley." I texted my mom. "Close the deal. Huge win for us." She didn't reply. On the flight home, I imagined telling them. I bought those gifts, hope blooming in my chest. But hope, I would learn, was dangerous when you gave it to people who had already decided you weren't worth it. I ended up at my college friend Sarah Mitchell's apartment in the Hawthorne district that night, my car still packed with those garbage bags. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a word. "You're staying here," she said, clearing space on her couch. I curled up under a borrowed blanket, the weight of being homeless settling over me like ice water. The next morning, Sarah handed me coffee and sat across from me. "What are you going to do?" I didn't know. My savings account held barely $2,400. Portland rent was brutal. Studios in decent areas started at $1,200 a month, plus deposits, first and last month's rent. I was looking at needing at least $3,600 just to get keys, and I didn't have it. I went to work that day in the same clothes I'd worn on the plane, my mind foggy with exhaustion. My coworker, Ryan Brooks, a UI designer, noticed immediately. "You okay?" he asked during our morning stand-up. I hesitated, then told him everything. The garbage bags, the locked gate, being thrown out the same day I'd closed our biggest deal. His face darkened. "That's messed up. Look, I know a guy who rents places in the Belmont area. Let me make some calls." By lunch, he'd connected me with a landlord willing to work with my situation. The studio was small, with peeling paint and a heater that rattled, but it was available immediately. The catch was the deposit, $1,800 plus first month's rent. I'd be left with almost nothing. I signed the lease anyway, my hand shaking as I wrote the check. Sarah helped me move the garbage bags into the empty studio. We made 3 trips, carrying my entire life up a narrow staircase. "This is just the beginning," she said, stacking bags in the corner. "You're going to be fine." I wanted to believe her. That week, I lived on instant ramen and slept on an air mattress Sarah lent me. I had no furniture, no dishes, no towels. I bought the cheapest essentials I could find at a discount store. A $5 frying pan, a set of plastic plates. Each purchase felt like defeat, a reminder of how far I'd fallen. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello? Haley, it's your mother." Her voice was tight, uncomfortable. "We need to talk about something." I waited, saying nothing. "The house," she continued. "We've decided to sell it. We wanted to let you know." My blood went cold. "Sell it? When?" "The papers are already signed. We close in 2 weeks. A family from California. They're paying $820,000. I gripped my phone, my mind racing. Dad's will left the house to me and Jessica. Equally, you can't sell it without my consent. There was a long pause. "We're using the money to invest in Jessica's tech startup. She's launching her own app development company. This is a real opportunity, Haley." "A real opportunity," the words burned. "You're taking my inheritance to fund Jessica's business?" Your father and I made a decision for the family's future. I tried to steady my voice. I have a legal right to half of that house. This is theft. Her tone turned cold. Don't be dramatic. Jessica needs this. You'll manage. She hung up. I sat there in my empty studio staring at the cracked ceiling. They hadn't just thrown me out. They had stolen my future. $820,000. My half was over $400,000. Money that could have changed my life. And they'd signed it away without even telling me. I called Jessica. Her voice was casual, almost bored. What's up? You knew about the house, I said. You knew Dad's will split it between us. Why didn't you stop them? There was a pause. My startup is bigger than your drama, Haley. This is a smart investment. That money is mine too, I said, my voice rising. You're stealing from me. She laughed. Stealing? Mom and Dad are helping me build something real. You should be happy for me. Then she hung up. I pulled up the family lawyer's old email, the one confirming the will's terms. It was clear. The house was to be divided equally between Jessica Ross and Haley Ross upon sale or transfer. They had violated it. I could fight this. Take them to court. But the thought of facing them again, of dragging this through legal battles while barely surviving, felt impossible. That night I searched for the real estate listing. There it was. Charming craftsman in Nob Hill. The description made me sick. Sellers motivated to support family venture. Quick close preferred. They'd advertised their betrayal like it was something to be proud of. Ryan brought me a used chair from his friend's garage the next day. You don't have to go through this alone, he said. But I felt alone. More alone than I'd ever been. My family had planned this for months. The overheard phone call. The secretive conversations. They'd waited until I was across the country to pack my things, knowing I couldn't stop the house sale if I wasn't there. Sarah came over with takeout that evening. We sat on my air mattress, eating pad thai straight from the containers. You could sue them, she said quietly. I could. But what then? I drain my savings on lawyers. Spend months fighting while they poison everyone against me. Even if I win, I lose. She nodded slowly. So what are you going to do? I looked around my bare studio. The cracked walls, the empty corners. I'm going to build something they can't touch. Something that's mine. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I couldn't let them destroy me. Not after I'd already survived being thrown away. The first month in that studio nearly broke me. My bank account dropped below $400 twice. I started skipping lunch, telling myself I wasn't hungry when really I was just trying to stretch every dollar until my next paycheck. I taught myself to cook cheap meals from YouTube videos. Rice and beans, pasta with canned tomatoes. One night I burned chicken so badly, the smoke alarm went off, and I sat on the floor laughing until tears ran down my face because what else could I do? Work became everything. I threw myself into projects like my life depended on it, because honestly, it did. Our startup was in a critical phase. The Seattle deal had bought us runway, but we needed to deliver results fast or investors would bail. I volunteered for every task. Late nights debugging code, weekends testing features. I was running on coffee and spite, determined to prove I was more than the family failure they'd labeled me. Then Sarah suggested something that felt impossible. You should talk to someone, like a therapist. I'd never considered therapy before. It felt like admitting defeat. But she pulled up our company's insurance portal and showed me it was covered. Just try one session, she said. What do you have to lose? Dr. Monica Chen's office was in a quiet building in the Alberta Arts District. I sat on her couch that first session, barely able to make eye contact, and told her everything. The garbage bags, the stolen inheritance, the years of being invisible. She listened without judgment, taking notes, and when I finished, she said something that shifted everything. Your family's actions weren't about you. They were about their own values and priorities. You can't control that, but you can control what you do next. Over the following weeks, Dr. Chen taught me to recognize the patterns. How I'd spent years seeking approval from people who would never give it. How I'd tied my worth to their validation. She gave me tools. Journaling exercises. Boundary setting techniques. Ways to process anger without letting it consume me. It wasn't magic. Some days I left her office feeling worse. But slowly, the weight started to lift. At work, things were changing too. My boss David called me into his office 6 weeks after Seattle. Haley, you've been carrying this team. The client loved your work. We're promoting you to senior developer with an 18% raise. I stared at him, not quite believing it. The extra $620 a month meant I could breathe. maybe even save a little. You've earned it, he said. Don't doubt that. But just as things started stabilizing, disaster hit. Our main competitor launched a product that did everything ours did, but better. Within a week, our user growth flatlined. Emergency meetings, investor calls, panic in the office. David gathered the team, his face grim. We need a pivot, something that sets us apart. We have maybe 2 months before funding runs out. I went home that night terrified. If the startup failed, I'd lose everything. I couldn't afford to be unemployed, not with rent and loans and barely any savings. I lay on my air mattress staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was drowning. Then I remembered something Dr. Chen had said. You're stronger than you think. You've already survived what should have broken you. I spent the entire weekend coding, not sleeping, barely eating, just working on an idea that had been nagging at me for months. A feature that would let teams collaborate in real time with AI-assisted suggestions. Something our competitor didn't have. Monday morning, I walked into David's office with a working prototype. He stared at the screen as I demonstrated it. This is it, he said quietly. This is how we survive. We spent the next month in crunch mode. I led a team of 4 developers, working 16-hour days to build out the feature. Ryan brought me coffee at midnight. Sarah checked in with texts reminding me to eat. I was exhausted but focused, channeling every ounce of anger and hurt into something productive. When we launched, user engagement jumped 34% in the first week. David presented the results to investors, and the response was immediate. Not only did we secure our next funding round, but we got acquisition interest from a major tech company. You saved us, David told me in front of the entire team. Haley's innovation is why we're still here. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd done something undeniably valuable. My personal life started filling in too. Sarah introduced me to her friend circle, creative types, artists and designers who met for trivia nights at a bar in Selwood. I was nervous at first, worried they'd see through me to the broken parts, but they didn't know my history. To them, I was just Haley, the developer who made terrible puns and knew way too much about sci-fi shows. Ryan and I grew closer. What started as coworker friendship shifted into something more. Late-night coding sessions turned into dinners. Dinners turned into walks along the waterfront. One evening, he brought me a sketch he'd drawn of my studio's window with the city lights beyond it. Thought you could use some art, he said, his smile shy. I hung it above my makeshift desk. This small, beautiful thing someone had made just for me. I started furnishing my studio piece by piece. A thrift store bookshelf, a lamp from a garage sale. Sarah's roommate was moving and gave me a small kitchen table. Each addition made the space feel more like mine. Less like a place I'd landed after catastrophe and more like a home I was building deliberately. Dr. Chen's sessions helped me process what had happened without letting bitterness take root. You don't owe them forgiveness, she said, but you owe yourself peace. I started journaling, writing out the anger and then letting it go. I wrote about my dad's dismissive voice, my mom's cold silence, Jessica's smug superiority. Then I tore up the pages, watching the pieces fall into the trash. Symbolic, maybe, but it helped. 4 months had passed since that night at the gate. 4 months of survival and small victories. I wasn't thriving yet, but I was standing. I had a job I was good at, friends who actually cared, a tiny studio that was mine. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't performing for anyone's approval. I was just living. That alone felt like revolution. 4 months after I'd driven away from that gate, I was in the middle of a critical code review when my phone started buzzing. I'd kept it on silent during work, but when I finally checked during lunch, my stomach dropped. 52 missed calls, all from my mother's number, and 1 text message. Haley, please. We need to talk. It's urgent. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. 52 calls, in the span of 6 hours. Something was very wrong. Part of me wanted to delete the message and go back to work. They'd thrown me away. Let them deal with whatever crisis they'd created. But curiosity won. I needed to know what had happened that was desperate enough to make them reach out after months of silence. I stepped outside the office into the cold November air and called her back. She answered on the first ring. Haley, thank God. Her voice was shaking. We need your help. Something terrible has happened. I leaned against the brick wall, bracing myself. What is it? There was a sound like she was crying. Jessica's startup failed. The investors pulled out. We lost everything. Everything, I repeated, my voice flat. The house money, she said. All of it. $820,000. Gone. We're in debt now. Your father had to take out loans to cover Jessica's initial costs and we can't pay them back. We're living in a rental in Lentz. Her voice broke. It's falling apart, Haley. I closed my eyes, processing. Jessica's startup, the one they'd stolen my inheritance to fund, had failed. How? I asked. What happened? Jessica's app was supposed to be revolutionary, my mom said, her words tumbling out fast. Some kind of AI productivity tool. But 3 months after launch, a bigger company released something similar. Better funded, better marketed. Jessica couldn't compete. The users never came. The investors wanted their money back. And Dad's loans? He'd personally guaranteed some of Jessica's business loans. When the company folded, the creditors came after him. His accounting firm is barely staying afloat. We had to sell everything. The furniture. Our cars. We're driving a 15-year-old sedan now. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Where's Jessica? Still with you? No, my mom said quietly. She and her fiancé broke up. He couldn't handle the financial stress. She's moved back in with us. Working at a coffee shop downtown. Barista shifts. My sister, the golden child, the senior engineer with the condo and the perfect life, making lattes for tips. I should have felt vindicated. But I just felt empty. Why are you calling me? I asked. Your father didn't want me to, she admitted. But we're drowning, Haley. You have that job. You're doing well. We need help. Maybe a loan? Just until we get back on our feet. A loan, I said slowly. You want me to give you money? After you stole my inheritance. After you threw me out with my clothes in garbage bags. My mother's voice turned defensive. We made a choice for the family, for Jessica's future. It didn't work out. That doesn't mean we don't need help now. I laughed, bitter and sharp. You made a choice for Jessica. Not for me. Never for me. You gambled my money on her dream and lost. That's not my problem to fix. Haley, please. We're your family. Family, I repeated. You threw me away. You sold my inheritance without telling me. You chose Jessica over me every single day of my life. And now that it's blown up in your faces, I'm supposed to save you? There was silence on the other end. Then my father's voice came on. He must have been listening the whole time. Haley, stop being selfish. We raised you. We put a roof over your head. You owe us. I owe you? My voice rose. I paid rent. I bought groceries. I worked my entire life trying to earn your approval and you never gave it. You threw me out like trash and stole from me. I don't owe you anything. He started to argue, his tone getting sharp the way it always did when someone challenged him. But I didn't let him finish. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I stood there on the sidewalk, people walking past, cars honking in the distance, and I felt a clarity I'd never experienced before. They weren't sorry. They hadn't called to apologize or make amends. They'd called because they needed something from me. Because I was useful now. My phone buzzed again. A text from Jessica. This is so typical of you. Mom and Dad are suffering and you're too selfish to help. We're family, Haley. Grow up. I stared at the message. Then I blocked her number. Then I blocked my mother's. Then my father's. One by one, I cut them off. Not out of anger, though there was plenty of that, but out of self-preservation. That night, Ryan came over with Thai food. He could tell something had happened. I told him about the calls, the failure, the begging. He set down his fork and looked at me. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. I'm not giving them money. I'm not fixing their mess. Good, he said firmly. They made their choice. You don't owe them rescue. Sarah called later, checking in. She'd seen my cryptic post on social media about family drama. I filled her in. Her response was immediate. Block them. All of them. You've built a life without them. Don't let them drag you back. I already did, I told her. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'm proud of you. That took strength. Over the next week, my phone stayed silent. No more calls. No more desperate messages. I'd cut off their access, and they'd gotten the message. I heard through a mutual acquaintance from my old neighborhood that my parents were struggling. My dad's accounting firm had lost clients. They were living in a 2-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town. Jessica was working 2 jobs now, trying to help with bills. Part of me felt bad. A small part, but mostly, I felt free. Dr. Chen helped me process it in our next session. You're allowed to protect yourself, she said. Saying no to people who hurt you isn't cruelty. It's survival. I wrote in my journal that night about closure, how it didn't always come with apologies or neat endings. Sometimes closure was just deciding you were done carrying someone else's weight. At work, the acquisition talks were heating up. The company interested in buying us was offering a deal that would mean stock options for senior employees. David pulled me aside. If this goes through, you're looking at a significant payout, maybe $80,000. My eyes widened. That was more money than I'd ever imagined having. Ryan and I went out to celebrate the possibility. We sat at a bar in the Pearl District, the same neighborhood where Jessica's condo used to be, and he raised his glass. To you, for surviving everything and still standing. I clinked my glass against his, to starting over. And as I said it, I realized I meant it. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was the beginning of something real. My family had gambled on Jessica and lost everything. But I'd gambled on myself and won. That night, walking home with Ryan, the city lights reflecting off the rain-slicked streets, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, not yet, but the solid ground beneath my feet. The knowledge that I'd built this, that it was mine, and that no one could take it away from me. 14 months after that night at the gate, I stood in a one-bedroom condo in the Hawthorne district, keys in my hand, sunlight streaming through windows that were mine. The acquisition had gone through. My stock options had paid out $82,000. Combined with my savings and the raise, I'd scraped together enough for a down payment. This wasn't a studio with peeling paint. This was home. Sarah helped me paint the walls a soft gray. Ryan assembled furniture from IKEA, cursing at the instructions while I laughed. My coworker Lisa brought a housewarming gift, a potted plant for the balcony. You did it, she said, hugging me tight. You really did it. I looked around at the space I'd created and felt something settle in my chest. Not just relief, but pride. I threw a small gathering the following weekend. Sarah brought her boyfriend. Ryan came with homemade guacamole. Lisa showed up with wine and bad jokes. A few people from work filled my living room with laughter and music. We ordered pizza. Someone started a playlist. And for the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who chose to be there. Not out of obligation, but because they wanted to. Ryan pulled me onto the balcony as the sun set, the city glowing below us. You know what I love about you? He said, his arm around my waist. You didn't let them break you. I leaned into him. There were days I thought they had. He shook his head. But you're here. You built this. That's everything. Work had transformed too. The acquisition meant our small startup was now part of a larger company, but they'd kept our team intact. I was leading a department of 8 developers, working on projects that actually mattered. My salary had jumped to $95,000 a year, more than I'd ever imagined making at 26. More than my father had ever made, if I was being honest. I started a blog in my spare time. Not because I needed attention, but because I needed to process what had happened. I called it Starting Over, and wrote about being thrown out, losing my inheritance, rebuilding from nothing. The response shocked me. Within a month, I had thousands of readers, people sharing their own stories of family betrayal, of cutting toxic people out, of surviving. One message stuck with me. A woman named Claire wrote, "I'm 23 and my parents just kicked me out for being gay. Your story gave me hope that I can make it." I wrote back immediately, "You can. You will. It's going to be hard, but you're stronger than you know." Those conversations, those connections with strangers who understood, became something I hadn't expected. Purpose. Sarah suggested I speak at a local tech meetup about resilience. I was terrified, but I stood in front of 40 people in a co-working space and told my story. How I went from garbage bags to owning my own place. How I learned that family isn't always blood. When I finished, a woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "I needed to hear this," she said. "Thank you." Through a mutual contact, I heard updates about my family. Not because I sought them out, but because Portland is smaller than it seems. My parents were still in that apartment in Lentz. My father's accounting firm had lost more clients. My mother had taken a full-time position at the library just to make ends meet. Jessica was still working service jobs, her engineering career derailed by the gap in her resume and the stain of a failed startup. I didn't feel joy at their downfall. But I didn't feel guilt either. They'd made their choices. They'd decided Jessica's dreams were worth more than my basic dignity. They'd gambled everything on her and lost. That was their burden to carry, not mine. One afternoon, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." I almost deleted it, but curiosity made me open it. It was from Jessica. The message was long, rambling. She talked about how she'd been arrogant, how she'd treated me terribly, how she realized now that Mom and Dad had been wrong. She ended with, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop. Maybe her apology was genuine. Maybe she'd actually changed. But I'd spent too many years waiting for crumbs of validation from people who withheld them. I didn't need her sorry. I'd already moved on. Ryan noticed I was quiet that evening. "Everything okay?" he asked. I told him about the email. He nodded slowly. "Do you want to respond?" I thought about it, then shook my head. "Some doors are meant to stay closed." He kissed my forehead. "Then that's your answer." Dr. Chen and I had our final session that month. I'd been seeing her for over a year, and we both agreed I'd done the work I needed to do. "You came in broken," she said, smiling. "You're leaving whole. Not because your family apologized, but because you chose yourself." I hugged her, grateful for the tools she'd given me, the permission to let go. My blog grew. I started getting interview requests. A local podcast wanted to talk about family estrangement. A website for young professionals asked me to write about financial resilience. I said yes to most of it, not for fame, but because I remembered being 25 and terrified, thinking I'd never survive. If my story could help someone else, it was worth sharing. Sarah and I went hiking one Saturday, up in the Columbia River Gorge. As we stood at a viewpoint, the river winding below us, she said, "You know what's crazy? A year ago you had nothing. Now look at you." I breathed in the cold air, feeling it fill my lungs. A year ago I thought I'd lost everything. Turns out, I just lost the wrong people. That night, I updated my blog one last time. I wrote about the journey. About learning that self-reliance isn't just about money or independence. It's about knowing your worth isn't tied to anyone's approval. It's about building a life that's yours, even when people try to tear it down. Especially then. I ended with this. If you're starting over right now, if someone threw you away or stole from you or made you feel worthless, know this. You're not broken. You're not less than. You're in the hard part. The part where you build something from nothing. But you can do it. I did. And so can you. The comments came in fast. "Thank you. I needed this. This gave me courage." I closed my laptop and walked out onto my balcony. Ryan was there, leaning on the railing. "You good?" he asked. I nodded, slipping my hand into his. "Yeah, I really am." Below us, the city hummed with life. My city, my home. The one I'd built when everyone said I couldn't. I thought about my parents in their small apartment, about Jessica serving coffee to pay off debts. I didn't wish them harm. But I didn't wish them back into my life either. I'd learned the hardest lesson, that you can love people and still leave them behind. That family is who shows up, not who shares your blood. That starting over isn't failure, it's courage. And as I stood there, the lights of Portland spreading out before me, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd made the right choice. Not just in cutting them off, but in choosing myself. For the first time in my life, I was free. And that was worth more than any inheritance they could have given me. That's Haley's story. A 5-year-old woman who refused to let her family's betrayal define her, who turned garbage bags at a gate into the foundation of something they could never touch, who proved that being discarded doesn't make you worthless, it makes you unstoppable. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our community come together over stories like this. Real question. If you were Haley, would you have given them money when they called, or would you have blocked them like she did? Tell me what you would have done differently. I'm genuinely curious about your choice. Hit that like button if this story hit different. Share it if you know someone who's ever been the scapegoat in their family. And subscribe for more true stories about rebuilding, cutting toxic people out, and proving wrong everyone who doubted you. One last thing. Have you ever had family choose a golden child over you? Someone who got everything while you got nothing, no matter how hard you tried? Share your story in the comments. This is a safe space. And here's the most important question. Do you think Haley should have forgiven them when Jessica apologized? Or was she right to keep that door closed? Drop a comment with your honest thoughts. Because forgiveness is complicated, and sometimes walking away is the strongest choice. Thanks for watching. Remember, being thrown away doesn't mean you're trash. It means you're finally free to build something real. See you in the next one.